Welcome. I see folks starting to come on in. Come join us. Let us know where you're joining us from. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll give folks a couple of moments to come into the room, get settled in. While we're waiting, please share where you're joining us from in the chat. I'd love to see where your regional location as well as your institutions you're representing. Dallas College, welcome. Mike's University, Pennsylvania. I'm seeing Nevada, Dallas. Drew University represented. Welcome, welcome. Wonderful. I'm seeing folks from Texas, Houston, Georgian Court University. Wonderful. Welcome. Oh, Bowie, Maryland, my old neck of the woods. Nice to see someone from Maryland. All right, we're going to get started here in a couple of moments. Good afternoon. I'm Gabriela Acosta, or Gabby. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing here at ACUE. Welcome to our webinar, our fireside chat, Navigating Changing Tides, Strengthening Institutions Through Teaching Excellence. It's an honor to have you all here with us. This is presented by the Association of College and University Educators, ACUE, and of course, the American Council on Education, ACE. Today, we're so honored to have our ACUE Chairman and CEO, Andrew Hermalyn, and ACE's President, Ted Mitchell. They're here to discuss the practical evidence-based strategies that build institutional resilience, safeguard student outcomes, and reinforce the enduring value of higher education in the face of unprecedented disruption. We all know it well. We are all feeling it. Yes, as those who are joining us, please go ahead and continue to share where you're joining us from, your institutions, and your regional location as well. For those less familiar with ACUE's work, we partner with higher education institutions to deliver excellence in every classroom through a complete faculty development ecosystem, including the only nationally recognized certification in effective teaching, which was endorsed by ACE. And you may all have seen our recent announcement of our reaffirmed alliance following nearly a decade of collaboration and work together to advance teaching excellence in higher education. It's a very exciting time for us to continue this conversation, and a pivotal one at that. Just one more housekeeping item before I hand things off to those who you really came to see. Before we dive in, I want to ensure that those of you who are with us, that you feel free to engage in the chat, comment your thoughts, share your ideas, give us your questions directly into the Q&A box when you can. What we're going to do is ensure that you submit those Q&A questions directly into the box. You'll see that at the bottom of the webinar screen, and you should be able to submit your question directly and then upvote each other's questions. If you see someone submitted a question that you would really like to have answered by the end of the session, please ensure that you're upvoting those so that we will address them by priority at the end. We'll reserve that time for questions for the last of about 15 minutes. Towards the end, we'll have about 20 minutes of discussion and conversation between Ted and Andrew. And we'll ensure that they have a chance to share a bit of their feedback with you, some of your answers for that Q&A towards the end, and I'll come back around and share some more details at the close. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand things over to Andrew Hermalyn. Oops. Apologies, let's see.
Hey, Gabby, I am here.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide myself. Please go ahead and take
And
it away.
is Ted going to join on camera as well?
Yes, here we go. Ted, feel free to join us back on screen. There we
Hey,
go.
hey, Mark.
It out.
All right.
There we go. Hey, Ted.
Hey, Andrew, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great here in the nation's capital, enjoying the foggy, cold day.
Awesome. So it's so first off, I'm very excited about this because you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, and that is a real thing for everyone who's joined us. I thought about starting Ted with a long, formal intro for
Yeah,
you,
don't do that.
but honestly, I feel like if you don't, I'd say this for our guests, if you don't already know who Ted Mitchell is, I'd suggest just grabbing your phone and Googling him real quick, because I promise that um, Ted's achievements are more impressive than anything I could fit into a few minutes. Plus, I'd rather save that time for a good, meaningful conversation rather than me reading from a bio. So, I guess let me just say, from our perspective at ACUE, we're incredibly lucky to have you, Ted, here. And I say we just dive in. Are you okay with that?
I'm so okay with that. That's great.
All right. So here's a softball. What are the biggest risks to a country without a Department of Education?
Oh, the slow meltdown of democracy.
Okay. It isn't even weird like laughing about that or chuckling about that because
Yeah,
the
I don't,
question.
I don't know whether my answer was supposed to be real or a joke, but it's somewhere in between.
Okay.
If I can expand a little bit, it's
Sure.
and as just to give you guys a little bit of background as we go through, I worked at the Department of Education in the Obama administration. And there are a couple of things that the Department of Education does that'll be really hard to replace. One is the whole student loan program. And sure, you could maybe move it over to Treasury or move it to Commerce and lots of, so it's a lot of cocktail party chat about that. But I think even more important is that both for K-12 and higher ed, the office manages the Office of Civil Rights. And so the education department really is the monitor of all education institutions to make sure that they are following the law and creating a non-discriminatory environment for all students.
What and maybe it's in similar vein, but maybe backing up for a second.
Yeah,
How do you choose what to talk about, comment on, with all that's happening?
yeah,
And how do you differentiate you, Ted, versus you in the role that you have with the American Council on Education? And how difficult is that for you to
yeah.
navigate?
Thanks for asking the question, Andrew. And it's a hard question for me, and I have to grapple with it a couple times a day usually. So again, a little bit of background. ACE is a membership organization, and we represent every college and university in America, 2-year, 4-year, public and private. And so, from the ACE point of view, what I say, and importantly, how I say it, has to be constrained by the what's good for my members. And it's not good for my members for me to get into fights with a Republican administration, a Democratic administration, state legislatures. So I got to keep the when I have a worry, I have to keep that at a pretty high level of principle and consequences. Well, I really think this violates that principle. And by the way, if you do it, here's what's likely to happen. So that's kind of the ACE thing. My board, which consists of 34 sitting college presidents, and those of you who deal with college presidents, just think about doing that with a room full of 34 of them. And they've been very good, and they have said, look, at a time when it's very difficult for our campuses to speak out for fear of retribution, it's important for ACE to do so. So, speak for all of us, speak loudly, speak clearly, don't pick fights. And, that suits my demeanor. I'm sort of an introvert by nature, but I also have really strong passions about what should happen and shouldn't happen in the relationship between institutions and their government.
What are your members most concerned about?
Yeah, our members are really concerned about the federal government imposing its will on some of the very basic things that we hold sacred is probably not too big a word for this, but for me and for ACE, we've kind of drawn 4 lines or red lines in the sand. And at least a couple of them were in a Supreme Court decision by Justice Frankfurter, gosh, about 50 years ago now. He called them the four freedoms for colleges and universities. But freedom number one is the ability to decide who we teach. And those are all of these are circumscribed by law. We've got some new law around the use of race in admissions. Fine, we will abide by that law. But within the laws, we should be able to pick who we want to pick as long as it's sort of fair and equitable and so on. So that's one. Number two is who teaches. And that's another place where we need to be able to make decisions that will provide a robust curriculum that represent different ideological points of view and not be dominated by any particular point of view, especially the government's. So that's number two. And is actually where ACUE starts to come in, is that when universities develop a really broadly talented teaching pool, one of the things that they are often not as broadly talented in is teaching. And so we'll come back to it, but I think that that's one of the places where we come in. And when I say we, I mean it. Our relationship with you guys is strong and long, and we intend it to be that for the future. So you're important to ACE and to our mission. Number three is what we teach, and that's academic freedom in capital letters. And it allows us to teach things that are not only supportive of particular policies, but are at their root, it's kind of intellectually curious, if not critical. What about, how'd this happen? What could we do better? What can we do more of? So that's number three. And then number four is what we research. And what are the questions that we ask? And so we see in some of the assaults on higher education, the government inserting its will and saying, well, you can't study this, that, or the other thing. So if you're in public health, all of a sudden, you can't study health disparities by race. That, whether you agree that that's a worthy thing of study or not, is really not the point. The point is the government, any government, shouldn't be able to direct scientific inquiry. So that I think that that's probably a wandering answer to your question, but I hope it gives you a sense.
Yeah, no, the framework, at least for me, was very helpful. I mean, I feel like there's probably a handful of questions here that are probably on the darker side. So let's switch to sort of optimism. What are you optimistic about?
Well, first of all, I'm optimistic every time I set foot on a college campus. I just can't help but kind of get the energy and the spirit and the feel. The thing I dislike about my job the most is I don't get to spend time on campus the way I did when I was a professor or a dean. And not to divulge, and I'm not going to apply for any of the coaching openings that are open around the Division I, but I do want to make my way back to campus someday, Andrew. So you can help me with that. So I'm optimistic every time I go on a college campus. I am really optimistic when I and the nation turn their attention away from the 9 or 10 it's unfair to call them the celebrity institutions that dominate so much of our news, because they don't dominate higher education. I was looking at the array of people who are coming on, and welcome, and I'm really glad to be here with you. But what I like best is that you represent the colleges in America that are just day to day doing the work, and I think we forget about that. The press certainly forgets about that. The administration, in some weird way, doesn't care about that. But that's what gives me optimism, is that no matter what the storms, we've got a steady rudder and some great people steering the ship, and we're going to get through this.
Switching a little bit let's talk about student outcomes.
Hey, Andrew, you haven't commented on my hat. I'm really quite upset.
I love your hat, but I also love all
you.
the hats behind you. The hat looks great. Can you people collect all sorts of things. So can we talk about the collection that you have and who are they from? What are they all from?
Sure. So this is this is an invitation as well as a description. So the hats behind me represent hats from my member institutions, from ACE member institutions. I'm not close to done yet. There are about 110 behind me, and we have 1,600 dues-paying members. So if you want to check with your bursar about whether you're ACE members, first of all, join ACE. That's the most important. And second, let me know, and I'll make sure that I've got one of your hats.
Do you wear all? Are they showpieces, or you wear some of them?
I wear a good number of them, to the point that occasionally I have to wash them because I get complaints from the staff that it's starting to smell like a locker room here.
All right, let's segue from
now
hats.
now you're way into the TMI.
Well, the TF2 student outcomes. What do you think one or two of the biggest threats are to student outcomes right now? And what bold evidence-based actions do you think institutions should take to, both safeguard and even enhance success?
Yeah. And again, I'll take a half a step back. One of the things that we have been doing for the last few years at ACE is reorganizing the Carnegie classifications of higher education. And I think everybody kind of remembers Carnegie as the R1 people, the R2 people. So one of the things that we noted in the spirit of student outcomes is that student outcomes really didn't matter to the Carnegie classifications. And so we're trying to drive student outcomes into the Carnegie classification system. We're also trying to drive student outcomes more into state accountability plays. And we think that the first thing that is at risk in student accountability is not keeping track. So one of the things that seems to be happening in this department is the evisceration of data gathering. So I'm very worried that one of the things that we'll lose track of is what are the things that are working in colleges to make student outcomes more successful and frankly, just make them more visible. So that's one. Two, I think that in many institutions, and we tried to do this with the Carnegie classifications as well, is that the Carnegie classifications, the research classifications, really had created a race to R1. And in that race to R1, teaching quality was often left behind. And the question of student outcomes was often left behind. In its place, it's replaced by how many research dollars are you bringing in? How many grants are you receiving? How much time can we actually buy of faculty members to take them out of the classroom to do their research? And frankly, we don't think that we think that, well, it's important to support research. That is not the way you achieve great student outcomes. So a defocusing on student outcomes. And then the third is a long time problem, which is the fact that we don't prioritize the teaching of teaching in any of the graduate programs that students come through. If anybody should have been taught how to teach, it was me. I have a PhD in education, and I didn't take one course that had a touch of pedagogy in it. And the teaching that I learned by the way we all do, which was by watching my good professors and my bad professors and hoping to be able to do more of the first than the second. So I think that demonstrably is probably the biggest problem, is that we have not looked at teaching as a science. We've not looked at it as a skill that can be developed. And we've all heard it: teachers are born, not made, incorrect. I think that's what brought our two organizations together, was ACE's sense that if we really wanted to focus on student outcomes, we needed to focus on teaching. And if we were going to focus on teaching, we needed a great partner, and that's you.
Well, I very much appreciate you saying that. I mean, we value the relationship we have with ACE. I think what I have found, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, is there doesn't seem to be a better time or more important time than to really focus on teaching, right? So in some ways, what I've experienced, would love your perspective, is amidst the disruption, it really does shine a light on the importance of student outcomes at the center of everything, and how to enable that is through great teaching. And how do we support the faculty in greater, more meaningful ways?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to take the clips from this recording, and I'm going to play them at our next membership meeting from your quotes. We talk a lot about why the public is so dismayed with higher education and what's going wrong, and we come up with all of these second and third order issues. But at the bottom, the issue is we're not doing a good enough job with undergraduate education, and that means we're not doing a good enough job connecting teaching and learning, which means that we need to focus more on the exchange between teachers and students. So let me unravel that a little bit. The Pew Foundation came out with its latest dismal results about what people think of higher ed, and I think we're, 70% think that higher ed isn't worth it or is headed in the wrong direction, or I forget what the specific question was, but that's a big number.
Yeah.
And yes, all institutions are suffering those same kinds of numbers, and we're not bad. I think that Congress is still right at the bottom with used car salesmen. But being better than that is not our goal. Our goal is to be admired and valued by the American public. So why don't they value us? There are a cluster of reasons, but let me point to the biggest one. 100% of the students who come to our door want a degree, and increasingly maybe a certificate in some of the colleges on the line. But they want to finish and they want to move on to the next phase of their life. We have been stuck at a 60% completion rate for 25 years. We've just not moved that number. So then what's that mean? That means that around 40% of people who come to us looking for a degree leave disappointed. There's no surprise that America is losing confidence in higher education. So what do you do to turn that around? You declare, as I've tried to do with our members and more publicly, that undergraduate success is job one.
Yeah.
And that we earn all of the other things we get to do, community service, athletics, certainly research. We earn the right to do those things by having success with our undergraduate population. And you can't even think about getting there without thinking about teaching and thinking about the importance of putting teaching at the center of a student success strategy. You could do all the advising you want, but if students aren't getting the goods in the classroom, they will not succeed.
Why is teaching quality not at the forefront for every institution, large, small, public, private, R1, community college? I mean, I generalize there because there certainly are a lot that do prioritize it. But why isn't that
probably most of the people who are on with us today? But congratulations and thank you.
Absolutely. But why isn't that sort of mainstream? Why isn't that a constant? That teaching quality and investing in the faculty and the teaching in the classroom. Why is there even a disconnect there, to the extent that there is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've never had to put it into a succinct paragraph. So let me try. I think it has a lot to do with the origins of teaching, which were never about teaching, but about the material. And so, you didn't have a lot of people thinking critically about the way the founding generation was educated, the way they were taught. The only question was what they were being taught. And so it was they were very, very subject content driven. And the actual mechanism was unexplored. I think the other thing is that then for a next and significant period, the people who came to colleges and universities came with an expectation that they were just going to be thrown stuff, and it was their responsibility to figure it out. And I think that over time we've decided that no, the institution has to take more responsibility for this exchange. And then around the same time, middle of the century, 20th century, we began to get serious about the science of teaching. What is it that we know about the way the brain works? What do we know about different strategies? We started in K-12 and got some pretty robust results as a result of that. And now I think higher education is beginning to pay attention to it. But I guess the last thing I'll say is higher education has always thought of itself as something apart from, if not the real world, at least sort of the tawdry nuts and bolts of everything. And insofar as teaching is seen as a nuts and bolts exercise, there hasn't been a lot of interest in devoting time and energy to it, much to our uh, um, eventual chagrin.
I'm going to weave in a question from Mark, who's joined us because it's related. Why don't student outcomes focus on the extent to which students can demonstrate they learn the required subject matter? You know, I think outcomes like first year retention, grad rate, and employment are essentially meaningless. So related a bit maybe to the origin piece, but if you want to add anything.
Yeah. um, uh, there was an educator passed away maybe 10 years ago, whose name is Ted Sizer, professor at Brown, did a lot of work in K-12. And he wrote a really great book on high schools in which he said, look, a lot of what explains the lethargy of high schools is a treaty between students and faculty, where students do just enough to get by and faculty do just enough to get them by. And I think that because faculty's attention has been drawn to primarily research and writing, they have given short shrift to the hard work of teaching and evaluating students. And so this is, the worst of it was back in the day when everything was a standardized test, and you were beholden to the Scantron, and whatever it spit out was what you got. We've gotten a little bit better at that. We'll see if AI makes us better or worse. But I think that the downplaying of teaching in the reward system of higher education, so that it's well behind writing and publishing, has made people look for shortcuts. And one of the shortcuts is just rudimentary exams and tests and quizzes rather than substantive ones. I think that this is where the real work of pedagogy, I think, is. It's hard, but I do think, and you work on this and you teach people about it. It is one of the places where I think AI can help us. AI can help us craft, for example, simulations and interactive work projects where students will have to actually show their work and show how they can solve problems. And I look forward to that. I think it's the right thing. Pause. New paragraph. I think that there is a move toward competency-based education. I think it's real, and I think in some subjects it's gonna become the way we evaluate students. There's a further movement toward evaluating skills, and that is harder because we don't have a common understanding of a skills matrix. We talk about critical thinking, for example, as a skill. What does that really mean? What are the thresholds of being good or average or fair at critical thinking? I don't think we have those rubrics or definitions at this point. I think that's a ways off.
So let's shift for a second. I want to get your take on international students.
Yeah.
The concerns around federal student aid and just the impact in general, right? That you see that either, certainly having the impact you're seeing now and into the future. What's your perspective on the international side of things related to the students specifically?
Yeah. It makes me very sad. I think that the assault on international students is one of the most short-sighted things I've seen come out of this administration. And I test my hypothesis with our colleagues who are on, but it seems to me that three things happen when you admit an international student. Four things happen when you admit an international student. One is that they really bring a different set of perspectives to the classroom, to the campus, to the student body, and so it's an add by bringing that perspective. Two, many international students pay full freight or near full freight And so they help subsidize low-income domestic students. And then 3 and 4 are what happens next. And so option 3 is that they stay in the country and they continue on, and they contribute to the economy in remarkable ways. If you look at startup companies in the US over the last, successful startups in the last 20 years, you see a disproportionate number of entrepreneurs who began their time in the US as international students. It's not a surprise, because we say that we want the best and the brightest from the world. They come, they stay, and we prosper. Then the other one is they go home. And when they go home imbued with some American values, American spirit. Perhaps they even root for an American baseball or football team. But you listen to somebody like Kofi Annan when he was Secretary General of the U.S., and he talked a lot about his experience at a small liberal arts college in Minnesota and the way that shaped his view of community, society, democracy. So step back, you got 4 outcomes, all of them are good. All of them are good. And so why we would seek to limit that, I really, really don't understand.
What's, with these relentless policy shifts, what's the one change you believe will have the most profound positive long-term impact?
Focus on workforce.
Okay.
I really, and from the beginning, when we were reaching out to the new administration, we identified workforce training as a place that we could work together. And I think that it's true if higher education has not paid appropriate attention to teaching. I think that they have also not paid appropriate attention to preparing people for the world of work. And so I think that that's an emphasis that the administration is bringing to education policy that I really applaud. Going back to your very first question, I think that it's that there are a number of programs that are managed by the Department of Education in the area of workforce who would be better in the Department of Labor or the Department of Commerce because they have closer connections to employers than the Ed Department does. But I think short-term Pell, which is one of the policies that came through in the bill. I can't bring myself to call it big or beautiful. It builds a workforce Pell program, and I think that that's really important. My guess is that that's going to change some of the way we teach. That faculty will be building more real world experiences into their coursework. I mentioned AI before. Institutions will likely be spending more time and attention on creating internship opportunities for all of their students, whether those are during the term or during the summer. And I think all of that's good. I also think that it creates an opportunity for more different kinds of faculty. And I know that ACUE does a lot of work with adjuncts and lecturers. And I think that is the place where recruitment of people whose first work isn't academic work, whose first work really is out in the real world. I think that that's going to grow, and I think those are people who, while they've got some ideas of good teaching from their own experience, they could really use some work in figuring out how to do a syllabus, how to do a lesson plan. It's kind of really not only the 101, but how can they shape their unique experiences in an academic setting.
We're certainly seeing a trend, an emphasis and a deeper interest in non-tenured track faculty, whether it be adjuncts, practitioners,
however they're called, right?
That's right. Folks coming from industry, et cetera. A question from a guest: what's your perspective on the changes in the federal research funding landscape? And do you see any positive opportunities or silver linings coming from it, or is it all just bad?
I'm working hard on the silver lining part. I think that they're I worry most about the shift from discovery-based science to um, politically informed, targeted research. So, do we really need? I'm probably going to offend people, and I apologize for it. I can't think of a better example. But do we really need to redo all the autism research to try to get at the very narrow probability that the preservatives around Tylenol cause autism? That's not that's not a discovery that scientists think we need to make.
No.
But the political demand for that science will mean that that's what happens, and so we'll have scientists doing research that's driven by those kinds of political questions. Even today, in the National Institute of Health, after a grant goes through the process of peer review by fellow scientists, it has to go through a political review.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a political appointee who sits on top of that process, who will do the imperial thumbs up, thumbs down
Right.
about whether it meets the quote unquote needs and priorities of the administration. And I think that that's a fundamental danger to the kind of science that has led to all the breakthroughs that we enjoy in modern life, whether it's technology, healthcare, art, culture, music. So I'm that's my basic problem. I do think that there are problems with the system as it exists. I think that the peer review system tends to be a little bit of an old boys club, or I think it is still an old boys club. I think that's still fair. And I think about this from an institutional point of view. We were able to lift the first HBCU into R1 this year, Howard University.
No.
Certainly deserved that. But the fact that much of the great research that's being done at regional state universities, at HBCUs, isn't really credited with being top notch as a result of a very closed system of reviewers who come from the same 20 institutions that we read about all the time. So I think that there's room for improvement. I think that if we're going to have a merit-based peer review system, it has to really work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the place where this disruption might give us an opportunity to make some changes.
So before I move to the next question, just a reminder for folks, I want to get to as many questions as you all have. Please use the Q&A feature towards the bottom of the screen. Throw the question in there, and I'll make sure we get to it. You can also upvote the question, so we'll go in order of the popularity. Ted, certainly we're in an era of increasing accountability and scrutiny. Any thoughts on how institutions can balance implementing evidence-based strategies with also the need to innovate and meet, diverse student needs?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. I think that along with accountability, kind of is the thread of part of our conversation. I think that if you see, for example, that you've got a 58% completion rate and you want it to be 80%,
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure out how to get from here to there. And so you're going to try some things. I think that all is in the innovation bucket.
Yep.
And then the accountability says you can't just ignore that. You got to look at it and see what works and do more of that. And so I think that accountability is jet fuel for innovation. And I really appreciate the work that ACUE has started to be able to tie changes in teaching practice and changes in just professional development with the student outcomes that are so sorely needed. I think that I mentioned advising earlier when I was in the Department of Ed. Georgia State, several others made great headway on student success by incorporating early machine learning AI advising bots to get people to ask the right questions, to be on track, to finish their programs, etc. Well, I think that teaching is this generation's version of that. I think that really understanding that if you change fundamental teaching practices and you do it consistently, then you will find students who not only just sort of meet their marks, which is what the chatbots did, but will learn what they need to learn to be able to do and know the things we want an undergraduate to learn and know.
I'm going to switch gears slightly. Again, another guest question. If you were advising a president at a tuition-dependent college right now, what one partnership model with a private provider would you champion, and which would you avoid and why?
I would first and foremost look for a partner in private enterprise who could provide a range of internship opportunities for my undergraduate students so that I could begin to speak to them and their parents about the real world connections that they would make between what they were learning in the classroom and what they were and experiences at work. You don't have to go really very far back in learning theory to know that people learn best when they have hooks to hang the learning on. And if those hooks are in the, again, so-called real world, they matter a lot. So it's not just the next thing in the progression of the syllabus. It's how is this connected to what I'm doing in my internship as a part of the management team looking at logistics for a small company. So that'd be the first one. At the other side, I would look for, especially if you're tuition dependent, and with that, I think in my mind goes, you can't do everything. And so I would look for a reputable bundler of other people's coursework and look to attach myself to Coursera is the one that comes to mind, and use Coursera as a way to offer my students everything from Google certificates to a Yale philosophy course.
Yeah.
So that you break the bounds of your own limited curriculum and make those kinds of possibilities available to your students.
Another question. Looking ahead, what's one change you hope to see across higher ed in the next decade?
I hope to see, well, in addition to the obvious, I hope to see more attention being paid to teaching and to evaluating promotions and even tenure on more on the basis of teaching than they are now. I think that let me just stipulate that that's the most important one. And if we don't do that, it's going to be very hard to do anything else. But I would also add to it, we need to get better at, as institutions, at accepting evidence of learning from other places.
Yeah.
So the short version of that is transfer. But that leads people to think about community college to 4-year or 4-year to 4-year. Those are really important. But we spend a lot of time at ACE looking at military training, at the Joint Services Transcript that every enlisted person receives. And it documents every bit of training that they've got. And while riflery probably doesn't count for college credit, there's a ton of stuff that does. And the best example is to think about an Army medic who maybe just has a GED when she goes into the Army, but does 2 tours of duty and has had 3 years of training and wants to be a nurse. Should that person start at the beginning of a nursing program? Probably not. And so we calculate that and we offer to universities the ability to credit that work. I think we need to do more. It's another way in which we disappoint the American student is by saying you can transfer credit, and then that really doesn't happen. And then the third one, which really gets into the weeds, and I know you asked for one.
Oh,
The third one is transparency. Um, we're working hard on one aspect of transparency, which is to make financial aid offers comparable, because right now they really aren't. An alarming number of institutions send out award letters that don't differentiate between grant and loans. And imagine being a first generation student and having a category that says aid. And you probably think that's scholarship money. But at many institutions, it's a combination of a Pell Grant, maybe some merit aid from the institution, and a student loan. That's just a very different proposition. So we need to make that transparent so that students can trust the information that we give them about how much it's going to go to cost to go to college.
Another question from a guest. What's one federal higher ed regulation you'd rewrite today to improve student outcomes without sacrificing quality?
I would change the Pell requirements so that they would be more flexible. I really like the idea that's been booted around for a while of an education, sort of a learning account. One of the things that we know is that students are coming in and out of higher education. The average age of an undergraduate is 25 and not 18. And the percentage of people who go to school for 4 years straight, who live in a dorm, who look like I did when I was in high school is shrinking. And we need to have a financial aid system that allows people to come in and out of higher ed, change course, et cetera. That's the one that I would change.
So I'm going to completely do a random one.
Love it.
What's one book you recommend everyone who's joined us today to go read?
American Midnight.
American Midnight?
American Midnight. Adam Hochschild.
Okay. American Midnight. All right.
And let me tell you why.
Okay.
So it's a history of the 19 teens and early 20s. And it is refreshing to know that we have been through a lot as a country before, and we can come out of it. So as a refresher course, this was when the FBI was running a little bit rampant. This is when lynching was the answer to our race problems, according to white supremacists. This is when whole towns were being burned down. And it reminds us that we do have there are some dark impulses.
Yep.
But we can get through them.
Okay. American Midnight. Here's one. What's a mistake you made that you're glad nobody knows about until right now?
This is good. This is why
okay.
I love you, Adam. Sorry, Andrew, I had Hochschild in my mind. So a mistake that I've made that I haven't ever told anybody about. I made a career move that made zero sense. And I thought it was going to be great, and it turned out to not be. So I'd been at UCLA for 8 years and had my issues with a large university, and decided I would take a break. So I went to work at the Getty Museum, which had just finished building its $8 billion castle on the hill. And it was lovely. It was great. It was very white. And there's a lot of great art. And I was so much fish out of water. I could not find traction. I couldn't get anything done. And after about 3 weeks, The high point was picking the art for my office. And after that, it was all downhill.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, people want to hear your answer to the question.
I didn't hear anyone who wants to hear my
Oh, I
story.
saw it. It was right here on my screen from Gabby.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's a mistake you made that you're glad nobody knows about? Wow, I've actually not been thrown this one back, so I have not had, but you didn't have
Thank you, Gabby.
either. What's a mistake I made that I'm glad nobody knows about? Hmm.
And I'm sure that the pause isn't because you haven't made mistakes, but just because you've been so transparent
Yeah,
that,
you know,
that
I'm
everybody
actually,
knows your mistakes.
I mean, I think, yeah, well, it's funny because what's a mistake that, like, that I made that I'm glad nobody knows about? It probably has to do something like I'm thinking about a handful of things related to my two girls.
Uh-huh.
I grew up with brothers, so I think the mistake maybe I made was thinking that I knew everything there is to know about girls and then having daughters and realizing I don't know
You
absolutely anything and
had not
thanking
a clue.
for my wife Sarah to teach me everything there is I need to know. And they're
Yeah.
only 6 and 4. So I mean, I think like I actually went non-professional. That's
Just
where I was going.
just think about the mistakes ahead. I think we could fill the chat with advice about how to handle tween girls. So
Yeah.
let her rip, gang.
um wow. Okay. Well, yeah, that's where that one went. Uh Ted, here's one and then we'll wrap up. I love this question again from a guest here. What leadership behaviors or decision-making frameworks have you seen help institutions stay steady and student-centered?
Um, yeah, I think that communicating relentlessly internally about priorities and how decisions reflect priorities. I think that that's sort of numbers 1, 2, and 3, and being
Yeah.
honest when they don't quite work out, not being afraid to try things and change course, but do it visibly. Um, and I think, frankly, I think institutional leadership, for semi-obvious reasons, is drawn these days to external communication. And I think that danger lurks there. I don't think you can win. I think you can win by building internal solidarity around some shared priorities and real communication about how you're going to get there.
Right. I think that's a great wrap of a question, Gabby. If you wanna jump back on, Ted, thank you.
Thank,
That was a lot of fun. I think we covered a lot of ground.
thank you. We really did cover a lot of ground. I'm sure that I made a lot of new policy that my team is going to be on me about in about 10 minutes, but it's that
You
relentless
sure did.
communication. Sometimes it happens in odd ways. Gabby,
Yeah.
thank you for taking care of us.
You've got it. And I promise I didn't make it up. The folks in the chat upvoted the question to have Andrew answer the mistake question. So thank you for sharing it. And, you know, mistakes are the world's best lessons to learn new things. And we're in a moment of learning a lot together. So thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who came out today took the time out from your very busy world, I'm sure, to spend the afternoon with us here at ACUE and with ACE's President Ted Mitchell. We're so grateful for your participation and collaboration, your phenomenal questions. If you are curious to learn more about what we do here at ACUE, please reach out to us at partnerships@acue.org. I did see a question about how you might be able to reach out to our panelists today. You're welcome to reach out to our marketing team at marketing@acue.org if you have a specific question you would like answered, and we'll make sure we route it directly to Ted and Andrew. And before you head out for the day, I wanted to share a little bit about our next opportunity to engage you all. You are more than welcome and encouraged to join us for a phenomenal upcoming webinar on strategies for facilitating deliberative dialogue in the college classroom. Our panelists for this are incredible. They are deeply engaging. It will be a highly interactive conversation of panelists and experts who will share their strategies to help students engage in thoughtful, respectful conversations around complex and often contentious topics. In many ways, it's a perfect follow-up to the conversation that we had today, more on the student level, the faculty level, and how we might be able to deliberatively have those types of difficult, challenging, polarizing conversations in the classroom. Please feel free to find more information in the chat around how you might be able to register for that. And we would love your thoughts, your feedback about how your session went with us today. We're always excited to have you with us here at ACUE. Please stick around, follow us on our newsletter, check out our brand new website. It's also live, fresh new look, modern, and a little bit bolder is the feedback that we've gotten so far. So please join us. We'd love to hear more from you and stay in touch. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.